let's go ahead and get into it now. Uh, that I have out of all the villains, there's a shit ton of villains that I do like. One, my top 10 villains of all of the series so far, and I'll give you the reasons as to why, are Frieza, Moro, Vegeta, Goku Black, Hearts, King Piccolo, Baby, um, I'm a bit, okay, Boo, I guess you could say Jiren, and Hit. Now, again, some of these are actually more antagonistic than actual villains, and some of these characters were villains and would end up turning into heroes. But I'll go down the list. Actually have a couple more too, but it was kind of hard to break down. And then I was looking because I'm like, well, wait a minute, I actually got this one character written down twice. So let's go down the thing. Frieza, I like Frieza because I like Frieza made a big impact as the overarching big bad of Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball, pretty much everything Frieza does pretty much sets up the story of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. You know, it's his actions that directly affect everything that leading up to that point. Now, I like Frieza in a lot of aspects. I think he's an interesting character. I like the fact that he has manners and he's very polite, even though at the same time he's very sadistic, very cruel, you know. And then you see how just unrelenting he is, especially when you see him losing. He would rather just like blow up the planet. You know, he what you call it, fire Earth or scorch Earth if he's going to lose something like that. I think he's one of the more interesting, mostly because of his personality. Like I said, he has no qualms about killing people. He doesn't care. You know, he's just a tyrant through and through. But I think his personality does make up for, you know, the lack of motivation, the lack of backstory. Because one of the things that I find interesting about Freeze is his the lack of the backstory. I want to see what his origins is. I want to see what set him on the path of him, you know, being this tyrant. Is it something that he has inherently? Was he taught by his father? I understand to some extent this is kind of the family business, which we did see a bit of when it comes to King Cole making his appearance in Dragon Ball Z after Frieza's defeat, as well as the Dragon Ball Super Brawly movie. You get a bit more backstory of how Frieza gets pulled into the main story. But Frieza overall is pretty interesting. Like I said, because of how just cruel he is, despite his politeness and his manners. Now, Moro I like because I think he's a bit different. He's a sorcerer. I guess you could say he's a sorcerer. He uses magic and stuff. And even though he's pretty much nothing but world domination, this is how he goes about using his abilities that makes him very unique compared to other characters. I mean, he's far from the only villain in the series that's used magic. But I think his level of magic, where he's absorbing the the life energy from other characters, energy attacks from other characters. Then, as you see, he becomes more youthful. The more energy that he ends up absorbing. His backstory of just being this complete asshole and then being locked up for like a billion years. Interesting, you know, it's interesting. Now, overall, again, he doesn't really have a motivation outside of just being an asshole. But I think his abilities as how he utilizes them does make him a bit of a unique villain. Uh, Vegeta. Vegeta is the first big bad. I mean, I guess you say Raditz is actually the first big bad, but Raditz is again because Raditz was sent there, and Vegeta ends up following him. Vegeta becomes an interesting character as well because what makes him interesting is again he's cruel, he's unrelenting like Frieza. You can see there's definitely some of Frieza's influence over his character, especially since his character is actually, I mean, Saiyans generally are assholes in the series and they like fighting and killing people and they're savages and barbaric and stuff like that. At least a lot of what you see initially in the early stages of Dragon Ball Z when they introduced the Saiyans. But Vegeta, I think, is actually pretty cool because to some extent he tries to be honorable, and you feel sorry for him because he's a villain that's he's an asshole. He's unrelenting. He's cruel. He's bloodlust. He has bloodlust. He just has no qualms about killing people, especially if it gets him forward or anything. But at the same time, you kind of feel for him because he has lost his whole race due to Frieza end up pretty much killing all of them. So that and you see how as the series goes on, at least initially when he's a villain, that you see that he suffers from that lack of not the lack of, but from knowing that he doesn't have his race anymore. He's the prince of all Saiyans, but are you truly a prince if you have no subjects? So that I really like. I like how generally his personality is. You see a lot of that in Dragon Ball Z, especially when he first gets there. Again, and you can see the rivalry he ultimately has with Goku, especially when he hates him. But generally seeing him more as a rival as the series continues, and throughout the series, even when he's a villain, you see his respect that he ends up getting, especially when he ends up fighting Frieza, and you see Vegeta actually begging Goku to defeat Frieza because Frieza is responsible for killing their people and having somewhat of influence of the cruelty of how he was brought up. So even though Vegeta is somewhat of a kind of a tragic villain in a way, but I do like him. I do like him. Now this is an interesting character, Goku Black. Now you can make an argument that it's Zamasu, and I guess you could say we'll say just Goku Black / Zamasu. Now now their motivation is, or his motivation is, the destruction of all life outside of deities, because he sees all life pretty much as a waste. They're corruptible. They're useless. They're violent, which is weird because he ends up doing the very thing that. Well, which it always kills me with villains like that, because it's like you're saying that people are violent, you're saying that they're lower life forms and they don't deserve to live, and you end up doing kind of the same thing that they're doing. So, and what happens in his story is he ends up in one of the timelines, or is it the main timeline? I think it's the main timeline, just hadn't happened yet. Well, Zamasu ends up doing is acquiring the big Dragon Balls, the giant universal ones. He switches bodies with Goku, kills Goku, and then just goes on the killing spree, murdering everybody. That's not deity. Now he does end up killing some deities as well, I believe. The gods of destruction, a couple of the gods of destructions. But I think that's an interesting, and that's a very dark take in the story. Now, despite the fact you have Frieza just killing all the Namekians, despite the fact you have Cell sitting absorbing cities of people, the fact that Majin Buu ends up fucking killing everybody on the planet. I think the Goku Black angle was actually, I don't know, it felt like it was really cruel in a way. It was really cruel. Kind of reminded me of the Trunks future, where the 17 to 18 end up basically just fucking hunting down humanity and wiping them out. And I felt like it had that dark tone to it. Now, again, that's not to take shame from the other guys doing the exact same damn thing, but it felt darker in a way. And I actually think that Goku Black was actually an interesting character. He has interesting abilities. Actually, a pretty cool idea. So that a god basically become inhabiting a mortal's body and just going to killing spree, killing every mortal he can. But that's actually a pretty interesting idea. Now this next one is basically the opposite of Goku Black, and I hear that damn train already. Good God, I hate that freaking train. But let's go ahead and keep going. Hearts. Now, Hearts is a villain in the Super Dragon Ball Heroes. I'm not sure if he's actually part of the Xenoverse, but Hearts is actually the opposite of Goku Black, and in which he wants universal freedom, domination in a way, but universal freedom from Xenos. Xenos is the head honcho of everybody. He can make and break universes and at a whim. He's a little childlike character and that created everything, that overlooks everything, that is the all powerful. And Hearts wants to kill him so that all of the universes can be free. Now, I think he also wants to take out the deities in this as well, but his main motivation, of course, his main focus is Xenos. And I think Hearts is actually an interesting character, and I can actually understand a character like that to a certain extent because you have Xenos that can just wipe out a galaxy like it isn't nothing. You never know if it happened to you, your galaxy, you wouldn't even know because you just be gone. Everything just be gone, and that's a lot of power one character's shit be able to wield. So I can understand Hearts like that. I think he has an interesting personality as well. He is smart. He's very laid. I don't want to say laid back, but he isn't seemingly just the type of villain to just go off the handle. Like Frieza, when things don't go his way or something expected happens, he can get pissed off and like that. And I like villains like that that are really, really smooth and really, really relaxed. When stuff don't go their way, they just fucking freak the hell out. But I don't think Hearts is like that. I think he's more reserved. And I do like his personality and his abilities as well. Now, going back to number six, going back to Dragon Ball, King Piccolo. Now, King Piccolo is the first big bad of Dragon Ball. He's an older, ancient Namekian that got sealed away, I believe, 100 years prior to the main story of Dragon Ball, in which he was trying to go on world domination. He got sealed away. Was it 100 years or was it 50 years? I think it might have been 50 years. 'Cause I think this is when Roshi was younger. He's already old as hell as it is in Dragon Ball. So I think it was 50 years prior, but it was some years prior to Dragon Ball. And when he gets end up getting released, he starts looking for the Dragon Balls, and he ends up again continuing his on for his world domination. I like King Piccolo because this man is just straight up a beast. He's a badass. The level of intensity he brings to Dragon Ball, raising the stakes to the point that you you can definitely see how his introduction to Dragon Ball ultimately is what brings Dragon Ball Z up in grandiose scale the way it does. Because you know, King Piccolo is because before King Piccolo, it was mostly humans, human level type characters. It was martial arts and stuff. But then when King Piccolo pops up, that's when you see more of the energy attacks, more bigger scale battles, cities being destroyed, stuff like that. And King Piccolo definitely, and his actions definitely affect the series because it deals with the first major death, which is Krillin, because I believe it was Drum that killed Krillin, and Drum works for to get the Dragon Ball, and Drum works for King Piccolo. Was it Drum or was it Tambourine? I think it might have been Tambourine actually. I think it was the one that had the wings. I think that was Tambourine. Drum is the fat guy, the fat one, I think. But King Piccolo, and also another thing about King Piccolo is because of King Piccolo, Piccolo Jr. is born, which ultimately leads to one of the most epic fights in the entire series between Goku and Piccolo. And ultimately, Piccolo becoming a good guy. So basically, King Piccolo, reincarnated as Piccolo and then ultimately became a good guy. That actually leads on down further down the series. So King Piccolo is actually pretty cool, and I like the fact that he was like old as hell, and then he gets the Dragon Balls to youth, and he becomes young again. Coming in number 7, Baby. Now, Baby is a villain, one of the major antagonists in Dragon Ball GT. I know that series that fucking sucks, but Baby was actually one of the more interesting aspects of the series. Now, Baby is our android created by the Tuffles, which was the race that Saiyans destroyed and took over the planet. and Baby bears a grudge against Saiyans, and I like that. That's an interesting backstory. He has a pretty cool ability to infect people, and he can infect countless people. One of the in his arc, one of the ones being Vegito. That's the body he fights Goku in. And Baby ultimately is just like, I like his personality. He's snarky. He can be overconfident at times. I wish that they did better with the fight. The fight fucking sucked. They might have one or two decent moments. And also, one of the cool things about Baby was you get to see him utilize Vegeta to transform into the Great Ape in his golden form while retaining his consciousness. I thought that was actually a pretty cool and unique idea. It made for a different fight. I could definitely tell you that. But Baby was actually pretty cool, and he ends up. It wasn't really him, but you see two more characters like him in Super Dragon Ball Heroes, Orin and Kamen, and I actually like those characters too. I mean, they have similar abilities. Um, but Baby, but I really did like them. I really did enjoy those characters. But Baby, I said, one of the more unique villains in the series with really cool motivations. Um, Now I ended up putting Hit and Jiren in because I had Nappa and I had Moro a second time. And I do like Nappa, and I'll go back and tell you why when I complete the top 10 list. Now, Jiren, as an antagonist, I like him. He's a flat character. Don't get me wrong about that. That he is the flattest character that they could. He's flat. He's flatter than damn near any other character in the series. But the man is just a beast. He is a straight up badass. I think now I watched the anime, and I read the manga. I like the fact that the anime makes him so much more stronger than what you see in the manga. The manga again, it's more straightforward and it isn't as grandiose as the anime. But the anime made Jiren look like a fucking beast. That man was badass. Nobody can touch this dude. He just ultimately wrecked anybody in the fight. This man was just straight up the most badass character, hands down. And it took four Z fighters. Well, Vegeta initially was in the fight too, but it did take basically four people to take him out. And at the end it was three, but we'll just say four. So Jiren just straight. I mean, he was blocking shit with just like a glance. The man was just straight up badass in this. So Jiren definitely has to make the list. I do want to actually come back and see Jiren and Goku have another bout, especially when Goku has achieved fucking Ultra Instinct. See how that goes and see where Jiren goes with that as well. I think that has to be some of the absolute best, most awesome fights in the entire franchise. Those are the most intense. They're straight up fucking badass. Jiren just ultimately is just a juggernaut in Dragon Ball franchise. Now in Dragon Ball Super again, we're taking it to another person, Hit. I like Hit on a lot of for a lot of reasons. He's got an interesting ability. His personality is pretty cool. Ultimately, like his design. I like the fact that he's this assassin, and that's an interesting character to see. I would have liked to see. Now in the anime, of course, there is the little side story of Hit having a hit out. There's a hit being put on Goku, and Hit has to do it. So I think that was actually pretty cool. I would have liked a bit more to. I would have liked a bit more to go with that. You know, that could have been more of an interesting story of perhaps he actually killing off the Z fighters. I think that would have been much more interesting story, and that introducing his character more than the way it was. But ultimately, Hit was actually a pretty interesting character. He had some pretty cool fights. He has a really interesting ability manipulating time skip. A lot of the things that he did, of course, when he was fighting Vegeta, Goku, and Jiren, was just straight up awesome. And I like the fact that he just so adaptable in battle as well. I think in the anime, I think it was more so in the anime where it was saying that he gets stronger through the fight as he fights because he's learning and he's adapting as he fights. I think there's a bit of a stretch because I'm like there's a lot of prodigies in the Dragon Ball, and when they fought somebody that was actually stronger than them, they got their ass whooped. But, okay, but ultimately, Hit was actually a pretty interesting and cool character as well. Definitely need to do more with that character. And lastly on the list is going to be Majin Buu. Now, I like Boo for several reasons. I like that he's a very diverse character in terms of his abilities or its abilities, shape shifting, be able to copy techniques just by looking at them. You know how he uses his shape shifting ability to ultimately fight different fight people and stuff. I think that's actually pretty cool. I like a bit of his story as well, dating back to way back when, where he's ultimately this very, 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 very evil character that ultimately gets influenced by good, how his transformation from bad to good, the different forms that he had. Now, I will say this until my dying day. The problem I did have with Majin Buu wasn't with the character and wasn't necessarily the arc itself. I think what they should have done with the Majin Buu arc was wouldn't it shouldn't have been one Majin Buu, or if it started as one Majin Buu, they should have split into like six of them, and that way they had to deal with multiple Majin Buu characters instead of one that kept fucking transforming. Because as we well know, for some reason Dragon Ball Z act like they cannot stick to just a character that cannot fucking transform. Every villain after fucking Frieza, after freaking Vegeta, just seemingly transformed. Vegeta transformed, Frieza transformed, Cell transformed, Buu transformed, Moro transformed. Who else ended up transforming as well? Oh my gosh! But they can't stop with transformations anymore. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Now my favorite version of Buu is Kid Buu and Fat Buu. And Super Boo's okay. The rest of them just pretty much irrelevant after that. But so Super Boo, no, last will be Super Boo. First will be Kid Boo, and the middle one will be Fat Boo. So it'll be Kid Boo, Fat Boo, and Super Boo. But some honorable mentions as well as Elect. Now, Elect is a businessman that's in business with Frieza when it comes to taking on planets and selling them and stuff. Very interesting villain, very interesting role, and it also gives a bit more credence to who Frieza is a character because we don't get no backstory on the planetary trade thing really at all. And his character does kind of give a bit more to that. So, and that's one of the more interesting things about Frieza. This business that his empire that he's built, and business that he's been into with the planet trade. So I like Elect for that. The man is just a sneaky asshole as well. General Tao, I actually like him. One of the first human antagonists that actually beat Goku and was quite deadly too. I mean, did he hit General Blue in the side of his fucking temple with his tongue and killed that dude? And General Blue gave Krillin and Goku a run for his money. So, in terms of antagonists, cool. Raccoon, love the guy. A big goof, a big just brute, and he's just so freaking funny. Frost was another interesting antagonistic character. I wish they could have did a bit more with him. But did he get erased? I think in the manga, I think in the anime he got erased. Yeah, I think he did get erased. Huh. So I wish they could have did more with this character, especially with Frieza. Uh, we also have Granola. Granola, interesting character. Definitely an interesting backstory. I don't like the direction the story went with his character, but I think ultimately, like his arc was one of the better arcs in the entire series. Better storytelling and everything. But also we have I wanted to talk about Nappa. I like Nappa because Nappa is like the definition of what a Saiyan is. He's just straight up a brute, unrestrained, doesn't give two shits about just fucking shit up and fighting. destruction. He is what you would think of that what he is what people fear Saiyans to be. Now, if you say Vegeta's exactly that same way, I would agree with you. Yeah, he's like that too, but he's a bit more calculating. He's a bit more reserved. Whereas Nappa is just a straight up just a powerhouse that does not give two fucks. So that's why I really like Nappa. When you see him in the fight with the Z fighters, he is just a brute. He is just wrecking everybody. What's the first thing he does when he lands? Blows up a city. He goes to fight the military, blows up the military. He just cannot stop himself from this ultimate like destruction. They have the Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction game. They need to have a Nappa Ultimate Destruction game for just the shit that he does. And even when you see him on other planets, he's the one that ultimately just jumps in and just starts fucking shit up, no problem.